And so that's where she said, but it was born. And that night when we gave our reports, and I gave my report to the group, and I said, this is what these people here in Arizona told me. And I told them, si se puede in Arizona, and everybody jumped to their feet, and they all started chanting, si se puede, si se puede. And that's where si se puede came from.
And then it spread through the whole union.
And now it's in the whole country with Obama. Yes, we can. Yeah.
Of course, and now to the whole country.
Right.
Wow. That's a wonderful story.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's such a core spiritual concept that nothing is impossible with God, that we can.
Right, and you know, it's interesting too that when Caesar was doing that, his first fast in Delano, how many people got so upset with that? Because a lot of people, Caesar's trying to play God, and we had a couple that was actually an ex-priest, and he had married an ex-nun, and they were so outraged that Caesar would fast that they left.
Really?
And we had like a little exodus.
Wow.
And Helen, Caesar's wife, and his daughters, Caesar fasted in this, we had built a gas station. And so they converted the gas station into this place where Caesar stayed there throughout the 25 days of his fast. And they got watercolors and they painted the windows, like those stained glass. And also people were so upset by that. And this is when I think when you talk about faith, it's not, Caesar would say he didn't like people who were the church mice, the people that are always, doing what it looks to be like churchly, but not at the core really having that faith and giving that part of their lives, to making things better for others,
Well, the scripture's full of that, you're ceremonially observant, but you're not, but your hearts are not there, your lives are not there.
And I'd say even Fred Ross, Fred was not a religious person. He didn't belong to any denomination, but he was such a great human being, such a great man. Mm-hmm. He was such a great organizer that most people don't know who he is. Because the people that came out of his organizing, like Caesar and Edward Law, first Latino city councilman and congressman from California, and then Cruz Reynoso, Supreme Court Justice, and so many others that came out of Fred Ross's great organizing. Alexia Medina, I could talk to him also, they came out of UFW. But the thing is that Fred was, so our mentor and our teacher, and yet he was not religious. And so I used to tell Fred, we're gonna make you a saint anyway, Fred, even if you don't like it.
Saint Fred Ross.
Yeah, Saint Fred Ross, because he was just such a great humanist, And it was interesting because we were in a Catholic church recently, my husband and I, in Clovis, and the priest was talking about people who are not necessarily religious but that are really saints. And he mentioned, of all people, Saul Alinsky and Fred Ross. And, oh my God. So Richard and I, my husband, when we met the priest afterwards, said, look, we knew Fred Ross, we knew Saul Alinsky, this is Cedar Charles's brother, Richard. And it was really interesting to hear that coming out of the mouths of a Catholic priest or the Catholic Church.
Right. Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the story that we didn't get on tape, but you were at this Catholic conference and this woman came up to you. You wanted to share that she was frustrated about the Catholic Church, and she said...
Just recently I was at the Call to Action Conference. This is an organization of Catholics that are trying to make the Catholic Church more democratic and more liberal, like having women ordained as priests and having priests marry, and just some of the restrictions on birth control and all these other kind of archaic traditions that the church still has. And this one woman walked in, and we're having a meeting of the women that are doing the women's ordination conference that are pushing for women priests. And she came in and she was just frustrated, and she blurted out, and she said, why should I question this, why should I continue even belonging to the Catholic Church when all of these things that are happening, she's talking about the pedophilia, and she's talking about all of the priests telling people to vote against Democrats because of their positions on abortion and positions against gays and lesbians. And she says, why should I continue to belong to this church? And the only answer I could think of was faith. We have to have faith that people will change and organizations will change, We have to keep that faith. That faith has got to be there so strongly, because if not, we become cynical. And once it becomes cynical, then you can't change anything, because that's basically like what Caesar said, you give up. And we can never give up. We've got to continuously have faith.
Chris Hartmeyer was saying that when he was fasting, that people came to join him. Like you were talking about, there was an exodus of some of the more sophisticated people, but he said that the farm workers came to join him.
Oh, absolutely. The farm workers set up tents all over the 40 acres there in Delano, and they joined Caesar in the fast. Yeah.
So in the end, it was a unifying.
Well, I think fasting is more than a unifying force. It does that, but to me it's a very transformative force, spiritual force, because when one fasts, number one, you cleanse your mind and your body. It's just like getting rid of all of the toxins, in your thinking, and you're able to see things so much more clearly, and hear and everything, and you can think so much more clearly. And it gives you such an incredible strength, because if you can go without food, if you can control your palate, then that means you can control just about everything else that you need to control in your life.
Wow.
So to me, when people fast, it gives you a lot of spiritual strength as individuals. And then of course the spiritual force that comes from that is what really then makes other things happen. And again, because you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it, but you know that it's there. And the whole issue of nonviolence, I think, also plays into that, because when you use nonviolence again, it's something that you can't see, but that you know that it is going to have this rippling effect, and that the people that are trying to harm you are going to be affected one way or the other, either in their hearts or in their minds. I remember when we were, again, working on a boycott, and we were picketing here at the produce terminal here in Los Angeles, and some of those Teamsters would come in, and they would, just get their little, the pulleys that they put the grapes boxes on these, what do you call them, I think that's the word for them, dollies, right? And they would just push these dollies and hit the young women in the legs with them, and these young women would just stand there, and they would just take these hard hits of iron on their legs, but they wouldn't move. And after a while, they gave up. They couldn't keep on doing it. They could not keep on doing it.
Wow. So the power of nonviolence is tangible.
Absolutely. And then after a while, we got their support, and then before you know it, we had almost all of the grape houses clean in the produce market. I think the only two that we never got clean were Jamara and Dorigo. Yeah.
Tell me about the pilgrimage.
Well, the march is, again, it's another great offering that people make, and I personally like to refer to a march as a prayer in motion, because people are putting out their energy out there, and as you're taking that step after step, it's like, you are going towards a goal, and it's a protest also. Just read recently in this book, Give Me Liberty, I don't know if you read that by Naomi Wolf, when she talked about how in today's world you have to get a permit to do a march, and you have to get a permit to do a protest, and it's almost like our civil liberties are being taken away from us, or that we have to pay for our civil liberties to be, to be shown out there. And so she talked about Dr. King's March on Selma, about how that march, the reason they did that march was to protest the fact that they wouldn't give them a permit to do the march, or that you even needed a permit to do the march. And of course, the farm workers' march to Sacramento, it does, and Caesar would always say that a march is a communication, because you're communicating and you're reaching people. And that's what that first march to Delano was. It was a march to let people know that there was a farm worker movement, and that we could form a union, and that they could get involved and make it happen. So that's what that march was about. And of course, when the marchers left Delano, I think we had about 60 or 70 people. By the time they reached Sacramento, there were 10,000. There were 10,000 people that joined the march. And people still remember that march to this day. And then the most recent march that the farm workers did, well, they did a recent one. That wasn't a very long march. That was just from Lodi to Sacramento, about this a woman who was died because of the heat, But then the one before that, we did that march because we were trying to get Governor Gray Davis to sign this bill that they could get some help from the state from the mediation service, so that when the growers refused to sign contracts, even after the unions won the election, and some of these negotiations can go on for 20, 30 years. Like the Dorrigo one that went from 72 to just last year that they signed the contract. And to get this, to be able to get the Governor Davis to sign this law, to get the mediation service to come in, and after 90 days, we don't reach a contract, they will come in. Well, we did a march, and that march, we did it in July and August, the hottest time of the year, and we marched out from Merced to Sacramento, which is about 150 miles. And of course, it worked. The governor was very reluctant, and he didn't want to sign that bill, but after the march, he did.
Well, I know because I ministered in the Central Valley and lived there. I know those temperatures.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how you were able to do that.
And to me, it was very interesting because I had just had an aneurysm and was just recuperating from that aneurysm. And but I was so incensed that the governor was even hesitating about doing this march signing that bill. So when they asked me to do the march, I said yes. I had already let people tell the governor that if he didn't sign this bill, I was going to do a fast in his office, right? And so then I heard that some people said to Arturo, well, Dolores is going to do a fast, so that means you have to do a fast. And he said, I don't want to do a fast. Let's do a march instead. Somebody called me to do the march, I said yes, and then my family was, oh my gosh, how are you going to do this march? You're just recuperating from having this aneurysm. I had been really, disabled for months. But I thought, again, it was maybe one of those instances where you think this is not very smart, to do this. But I felt so strongly that I had to do it that, and you know what? I did this march, did not get one blister, not even one.
Wow.
And some days we were marching 20 miles a day. I did not get one blister.
That your faith was honored.
Something, yeah.
I think that it brings me to sort of the personal question, which is how have you sustained for so many years in this struggle? Like, how has your faith sustained you? How have you been sustained above and beyond that? How have you been sustained?
Well, one thing is that when you see the results of the work that we do, which is, of course, I learned that in CSO, the Community Service Organization, when I was sent up to Sacramento to pass all of these bills, didn't know beans from bananas about how you pass legislation, and then we were able to get all of these incredible laws passed, like the disability insurance for farm workers, driver's license in Spanish, the ballot, the voting ballot in Spanish language, getting aid to needy children and unemployed children of farm workers, and getting the right to register voters door to door, getting all these laws passed. So I already knew that you could do things, right, once you just got out there and had the organizational power behind you, like at the CSO. So taking that into the United Farm Workers was very easy. So I think that when you look back and you see all of the great victories, that definitely sustains you. Personally, how does one sustain oneself? Well, the one thing I think that's the hardest thing for all of us, especially as women, is to, kind of ignore, I should say, the discrimination that we receive as women, even though we're in the struggle and we're out there fighting and we still don't get the same respect, you know what I mean? And that's very, very hard to take. But then being a person of color, you're kind of already inoculated a little bit, but then when you get hit a second time, because you're a woman, and then of course now that I'm older, you get hit the third time. And so having to just kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, this is just part of it, you just got to keep going, even you have all of these other little, things that you have, obstacles and heartbreaks in a way, because it's heartbreaking, I think, when you're out there struggling and often your own peers don't even respect what you're doing. But again, that's where the faith comes in, because you've got to have faith in knowing, I don't care what they say, or how they you might say, criticize what I'm doing. I think what I'm doing is right. And I have faith in what I'm doing. And as long as I'm trying to help people, I'll keep on doing it. And so, what sustains me? Faith sustains me.
I think it's so important that you just said that, and that's, the power of modern technology is that long after we're gone, these tapes will be on the internet for people. That's the power. Did you have other comments that you wanted to make about how faith impacted the organizing?
Well, I just think, just to follow up on what I said, I think, and that's one thing I really saw so much from Caesar, is that you've got to have faith in yourself, right? Well, I should tell you this other story, too. When the strike started, and And we had been on strike then for probably about a month or so. And of course, every day we're out, we had no money or anything. And we're out there in the picket lines every morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and, till late, and the sun would go down. And then we'd follow the strike breakers to the places where they had them housed and to get them out to go back to the field. So every day it was the same thing. You'd go to the field and the whole new crew of strike breakers were there. It was so close to the Mexican border that it was very easy for the growers to bring strike breakers in. And I remember I left one of my assistants that I named as an assistant on the big line and said, stay here, I have to go now. So I went into the office and said, Caesar, there's more strike breakers out there. And he looked at me and he said, what are you doing here? You go back to that picket line. He said, you can't leave your picket line by itself. Oh, I've got somebody. No, you've got to be there. He said, you've got to be there. And he said, don't worry, something's going to happen in there, and all the strike breakers are going to be walking out pretty soon. Sure enough, I got back to my picket line, and what happens is, some foreman yelled at some worker, insulted some worker. So sure enough, I guess I was not there not even 2 hours when the whole crew walked out. So those are just like signs, and even when I made the decision, to start working full time as an organizer.
And tell us more about that decision. How did you make that decision?
Well, I sweated it.
You were a teacher, right?
Yeah, I was a teacher, and I knew that I was making I was going through a divorce, had 7 children. I mean, talk about crazy. And so I remember just thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I remember I used to love to take long baths, and the water kept getting colder. I kept heating up the bath water, and finally made my decision. And then one of the things I was worried about is, I had these 7 kids, and although my mother was a businesswoman, she was very supportive of me and whatever. But I thought, how am I going to keep feeding these kids and going through a divorce? And the next morning, I'll never forget this. There was a big box of groceries on my porch. A big box of groceries on my porch. And then the other thing was I was worried about because I didn't have a coat, right? And before I left Stockton to come to Delano, 4 different friends had given me coats without my even asking them. Mm-hmm. There was little signs, and the other sign that I like to talk about is my daughter, oldest daughter, was going to make her confirmation, and I didn't have money to buy her shoes. So I was just kind of cringing, thinking she's going to walk down the aisle, and she had these little white tennis shoes, but they had holes in them. And so I'm sitting there in the pew, watching the kids come down the aisle for the confirmation, and then I see these little farm worker kids coming down the aisle, and they all had little raggedy tennis shoes on. And then my daughter was towards the end, and I thought, yes, I made the right decision. And the other thing is my children, like everybody, a lot of my friends said, oh, you're going to, you've got a good job. I was one of only 3 bilingual teachers in the whole town, and you're going to run off to join the circus, run off to organize farm workers. And your kids are, one of my compadres said, oh, Dolores, your kids are going to go to be dope addicts and this and that. And my kids have been wonderful. I mean, they grew up very poor, clothes out of donations, food out of donations, didn't get any school activities like other kids did because, we were always in the movement, and yet they've just grown up wonderfully. My husband's a medical doctor. He's a family practice doctor, Dr. Huerta. My daughter Amita's an attorney. Wow. And I have a daughter who's a filmmaker, Yelena, and my daughter Monica's a teacher, and I have a son who's a chef, and a daughter who's an emergency room nurse, and my daughter Camila, who graduated from Most College and early childhood development, is now my executive director. Wow. And my other 2 daughters, Lori, who's been a paralegal, and many other occupations that she's had, and my daughter Lisa will work with me in my own organization, which again is a big thing because I'm starting a home organization. I've started one to train organizers, send them into communities, and to use the same kind of methods of house meetings and organizing that Fred taught us. And it's going well. We've got lots of committees that are doing a lot of wonderful things. One of our committees passed a bond issue to get a gymnasium built at their school, $4.8 million gymnasium. Another group of our committees, we just passed a 1-penny tax increase to get more recreation for the kids in the city of Arvin. And we've gotten 10 streets already paved with sidewalks and gutters that didn't have them there. Yeah. Swimming pools, 2 swimming pools that were opened after have been closed for 5 years. And, we're fighting the arsenic in the water systems. And So we have all these different projects. We got over 100 kids signed up for tutoring programs. We took 90 kids up to the sequoias into the beach this summer. Farmer kids at the and all of these committees are doing this on their own. What I do is I try to raise the money so we can hire and train more organizers. And all of our, well, 4 of our organizers that we have come right from our volunteer base. From the farmer community that are doing the volunteering for us. And so the faith works continue.
Thank you, Dolores. I want to do the final thing with you. I just need to make sure to put the dog outside. So wait one second. Actually, let's do this. I think he's probably okay. I want to ask you to speak to the young people. I'll just do like this for a second. Come here, Buster. Alina? Almost done. Okay, so Alina always likes the last part, the part where we speak directly to the young people. Is just to what this is really for. This website is for young leaders, young religious leaders, young leaders of faith of all different faith traditions who are going to take the struggle for justice into the 21st century. And what advice do you want to give them?
Well, to all the young leaders out there, I just want to remind you of something that I'm sure you already know, that all of the major changes that have happened in our society, in our United States and other parts of the world, is really come from the young people. When we look at all of our movements, whether it's the labor movement, when the Walter Luthers of the world look over the auto plants, and we think of the civil rights movement, the young people who sat in the lunch counters there in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the young people went out there and registered to vote. Some of them registered to vote, some of them were killed. So the civil rights movement was, young people that really did the work in that movement, and the peace movement. It was the young people that hit the streets that finally ended the war in Vietnam. The women's movement, it was young women who marched and demanded the right to vote, women that went to prison, and some who even died, some that were force-fed when they were fasting out there. The whole environmental movement has been the young people that have been at the forefront of that. So you might say that the future of our world is really in your hands. And I know that many of you are going to be thinking about this seriously in the very many different ways that we can really continue to build a peace and justice movement for our world, because we know that it's possible as we see so many structures that are falling down around us, and the main thing is that we sometimes don't need to have all of the answers, because we don't even need the answers. We just need to know the things that we need to change and to start on that path of change, because the answers will come and the doors will open. And that's the one thing that we can be very, very sure of, because again, the faith that we have will carry us through, and it'll make that faith will make happen what we need to happen. But the main thing is to understand that we do have the power in ourselves. We have the power. We have the people power, and that's all that we need to make the changes in this world and to make it a better world. And to have that faith in ourselves. And sometimes when we feel a little anxieties, or we kind of lack a little self-confidence, we can do some role-playing and just pretend. And then our self-confidence will grow, and I call it our psychical muscles will grow, right? Because we get stronger. And the only thing that we have to fear is fear. And we have to kind of look that fear in the face and say, you know what, I'm not afraid. To be leaders, we need to take risks. And even when we have those butterflies in our stomach and those anxieties, that is natural. I say to folks that it's just like when we're exercising and our muscles hurt, we don't stop exercising. We can say, oh, my muscles hurt. No, when our muscles hurt, we're getting stronger. When we have those butterflies in our stomach and those little anxieties, at that moment, we're becoming stronger. And as we do more, and we're out there more in front, and you know, and we don't have to be invited. We don't have to wait to be invited. We just say, okay, I know what has to be done. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do it. And suffer the criticism, it will happen. As long as we have faith in ourselves, we can make a better world. Si se puede.
Amen.